Hi there everyone, and welcome to the stream. So, as you all probably know by now, or will know in a few seconds, Ralph is at Gen Con in the United States. So, quite a different time zone, quite a different place, far away, at least for me and a lot of you guys. Now we also have a lot of people in the US, so I guess he's closer to you right now. Maybe some of you have even been able to join and visit Gen Con. But that's not to be for me, at least not this year. Maybe another year, we'll have to see. But today I'm doing the stream for you. So, what we're going to be talking about today is city floor plans. And why did I pick this topic right now? We have been talking about that before. It's quite an interesting topic and always worth revisiting. Last time it was Ralph talking a little bit about it. But the reason today is that, as also a lot of you know already, we have a mapping competition going on. You can visit the forum to check out the rules, the specifics. Now, the rules aren't particularly complicated. The main idea is just map a building from the Vertshusen city. And we see a clip from the city on the screen right now. And the main idea for the competition is just pick a building, map it, submit it to the competition, and you can win some nice prizes. For example, a voucher for the Pro Fantasy store or some cereals for some existing products. They're all listed here. There's also one additional factor usually when I hold competitions, and that's I like to get more maps for the community atlas. You don't have to participate and submit your maps to the atlas even if you do submit them to the competition. That's not a requirement, but I always hope that as many people as possible will actually do that, so we can improve the atlas, get more maps for everyone to enjoy and everyone to see and use and play with and learn from. So, if you're making a map that is supposed to go into the atlas, it's kind of important that two people doesn't map the same building. Often we can find somewhere else for it and just move it, so it probably won't be the biggest problem for a city. But when you're mapping the floor plan for a house, you are after all trying to match the outline of the building. So you kind of have to at least then find a building that looks very similar in outline for optimal placement. So the idea here is that if you want to do it for the atlas as well as for the competition, we have this system where people can just basically post the map and just indicate, like it's done here, well, I want this building. If you don't intend to participate in the atlas but only in the competition, you don't need to claim a building beforehand. That's just to make the atlas part of thing easier, but it's not a requirement for the contest. So I was thinking that for this live stream, I'm gonna pick one of the buildings in the city and start mapping it. So I had a look down through the thread just to see which building has been claimed and which buildings hasn't been claimed. So I just settled on for the stream. I want this tiny little house right here up against the city wall. Now I deliberately picked a small building because on the live stream I doesn't have too much time to finish up a big building with lots of furniture and lots of things. So I'm just going for one of the smaller buildings. Keep in mind though that most of the buildings in a city like this are quite small already. There are different sized buildings in the city, but on average, most of the buildings are a bit small. Cities are tightly packed. People didn't have too much room in cities to build. So these buildings in this city are not huge palaces. They are usually rather small houses, and the one I picked is quite tiny indeed, actually. So keep that in mind when you're picking a building. Even if you might just look at the overview here and think, well, this looks like something reasonably big. Do some measurements. Camping Cartographer 3 has a lot of measurement tools built in. You can check, is this building really the size of the building you want when you decide for a building. So I'm just going to go to the source map and start with that one, and that's found in the community atlas. There are plenty of links in this topic here, but I have this Vertshusen link. And for people wondering, the word Vertshus is actually a Norwegian word meaning inn. So this city is basically the inn city, or city of inns, really. And I see it that probably somewhere where a lot of travelers are traveling through and are spending their time. So there will probably be multiple inns in a city like this. So if that's what you fancy, I don't think you can go wrong with making an inn for the competition. But that's not what I'm going to do. Again, I'm going to do the little city house down here, so I need to get the actual map. You don't absolutely need to get the map if you don't want to. You can just measure on the map. For example, if I go to the high resolution version and zoom in on the image, there's a scale bar right down here. So I can see this scale bar is 20 meters, and it's difficult for me to see the scale bar and a building at the same time, but when working on your own computer, you can just measure that and measure the size of a house if you want to get the size of a building without actually bringing it into Camping Cartographer 3+. But I prefer to get it into Camping Cartographer, so I'm just going to download the FC file, the map file. So, fine. And now I have my file in my folder, in my maps folder here, Vertshusen City. And I can now open it in Camping Cartographer 3+. Ooh, that did not look pretty. So there's a lot of red access here. Why is that? And what can we really do about it? Well, the simple reason you are encountering red access in a map is that you do not have the appropriate art resources installed on your own computer. Now, first of all, we can kind of ignore that with this map, because if I zoom in to the city wall section, which is where the mapping competition is taking place, you can see that the background seems to be missing because I don't have the fill, and a few of the buildings, but almost all of the buildings are fine. They are, at least for me, for the products I have installed. That might be different for everyone, of course. That's one of the kind of downsides with the community atlas, because we need to allow people to actually use the different products they have. We cannot say that everyone should just use basic Camping Cartographer 3+ and nothing else, because then everyone would own everything. That doesn't really work, because you don't have all the city and dungeon resources and all of that in the basic package. So seeing the map as I do still requires the ownership of several products. But this is why I pointed out earlier, you can start with just the PNG image. You don't really need to use the city map inside Camping Cartographer 3+ at all. Just load the image file into an image editor, do some pixel measuring against the scale bar of 20 meters, figure out the size of the house, just start drawing in Campaign Cartographer 3+. Start with a floor plan style you have access to, and do not be too worried about the fact that the map looks like this. After all, you do have, when you go back here, the entire image nice with all the buildings. So if you don't have all the products used in this map, either just, as I say now, just, okay, well, I can still identify and use several of the houses here. Some of them are missing, but most of them are available. So for Community Atlas map, how do I know if or what products I need to see that map? Well, if I zoom out, all Community Atlas maps has this sidebar with a link called Products Required. You can click and you can see here which of the products do this map require. So you can see this map requires Campaign Cartographer 3+, Dungeon Designer 3, City Designer 3, Symbol Set 2, Symbol Set 4, and also 4 of the community art packs: Venteri Cartographic Collection, Xuak 2.0, Bogus Mapping Objects, and Dungeness Archives. All of these are in use in this map. These 4 later ones are free and everyone can install them. The top 5, of course, are paid products from Pro Fantasy, which is again a reason you may just want to go with the image. Purchasing everything just to see every map can get a bit expensive. But that is up to you. You can at least just check which products you need to see this map. So for the free resources, you can find them in the forum. If I go to the community forum and I click the helpful resources and fact link, there's a lot of resources here, including the free symbols and artwork link. This one contains the links how to get all of these symbol packs. So if you need them, you can find the instructions here and just go download them. I won't go into detail or show exactly how to do that here now. That will take a bit too much time. But I'm going to open the map in an instance of Campaign Cartographer 3+, which you do have all of this in. So let me just close this one. Not gonna save it. And I'm gonna open my alternate version of Campaign Cartographer 3+. And this is just regular Campaign Cartographer 3+, but also with the additional artwork installed. And here we can see the city looks nice. Everything is visible. But again, as I just said, there is no reason you need to be able to see everything to do a competition or make a floor plan map from the city. It will work just fine even if you just started with the map with the red axis. The red axis in the main map will not really have any effect on your floor plans. So, okay, since this is for the competition, I'm going to claim the building now. So I'm going to just go to the forum topic again. Oops. Going to find the image in the top post. This is the image. I'll copy the link of that one. Open it in an image editor. Grab myself a paintbrush. Let's see. My layout is a bit of a mess right now. I was playing a bit too much with this yesterday and had some issues, so I just need to find my colors. There are my colors. And 7 pixels, fine. So I'm just going to circle this one Save it. It's a JPEG, I don't need 1500. 750 is enough. Put it and call. This is my building. So let's use my name. Let's go to the forum topic. Claim this one. There we go. So now everybody should know which building I choose, and we can progress with the mapping. Close down my image editor, don't need that anymore, and I'm gonna zoom in to the building. Now, starting a floor plan can be done in multiple ways. I mean, I can just go to File, New, start a new floor plan map, and everything is fine. Or I can actually have Campaign Cartographer 3+ generates the floor plan from the building. So I'm gonna do the latter. I know Ralph has demonstrated this before, but doing File, New and creating a new floor plan from scratch, you also know exactly how you do that. So I need to make sure the city menus are loaded. The city menus are not loaded for some reason right here now. So I'm clicking the city button and some buttons, there we go. I click the city button and I go to city and I pick floor plan. I pick the building. I click do it and I get to pick the style. Now this template list is not exhaustive. It doesn't contain all the styles I own. If you need to do it to a different style, it's possible to put your own templates in here, or you can just create it in one of the styles available here and then just convert it to another style. I did have a separate live video a little while back where I did show you how you could convert one map style to another one. That was an overland map, but for floor plans the procedure is similar. But now one very important aspect of this map comes up, because the original map is in metric. You might have been seeing that the scale bar said 20 meters, so this is a metric city map. It's a bit different. Some people like metric, some people like imperial, and it's also very different depending on which role-playing game you're playing. I tend to map maps in the same units as the role-playing game. I'm playing a lot of Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, which is using feet and inches, so I use that usually for my mapping because of that. But I also play some modern games, which very often, almost exclusively, use metric units. So it depends a little bit on what are you using the map for, what game, so on. But there is one very important thing here. Campaign Cartographer views units as something abstract. Campaign Cartographer actually just has something called map units, which is the units used by Campaign Cartographer. It doesn't really care about inches or meters or anything like that. That's more something we as a user is concerned about. But this also means that Campaign Cartographer cannot simply convert your map. So, since this original map is in metric, if I choose the imperial template now, it is going to be scaled wrongly, because if the house is 5 meters long, that means that it's 5 map units in the city, and it will become 5 map units on the floor plan. But unfortunately, on the floor plan, a map unit is a feet, so it will become 5 feet. So about 3 times as small. So I'm going to do an imperial map right now, just to show you how to easily fix these things and how to work with it, and what you need to be aware of. If I choose the metric template, since the city is also in metric, the scale will be correct out of the box. So this means that you are not only choosing the floor plan metric versus imperial, the scale type you want, but you need to select the correct one based on the map you are in, or you need to fix it. So I'll happily fix it, because that's allowing me to show you how to do it. So I'm going to make just a simple little smithy here. So let me just call this tiny smithy. I'm thinking here that this is someone with a small smithy on the ground floor, and the house will have 2 floors, and the owners of the smithy will live on the top over the smithy itself. That was common in many cities. You had the businesses on the bottom floor, and you had the apartment where the owners lived just above it. Now, I could align the house so the house is straight, but I don't think it's fun having a straight house. I think I want it at an angle, just as it's an angle in the original map. So I'm gonna keep north straight up. I can add a roof drawing just for the fun of it. I'm not actually going to use that, but the roof drawing is just one extra level where you can see the roof of the house. I don't think it's really required here, because it will basically just be the image of this roof, and you already have this in the city map. But someone might think it's nice. So I'm gonna make it, and this will make a folder in the same place my map is. Remember, this $sign at the beginning refers to the location of the map. So the floor plan will be stored in a folder called Vertshusen City Floor Plan, in the same folder as the map. So that's a nice place to put them. Do I need a scale bar compass rows? No, I'll throw them in later if I need them. So I can just, yeah, I don't want to open the floor plan just now. I'm just gonna make them. And there we go. I now have a folder, Vertshusen City Floor Plans, with my files in. The blank one here is if you want to add additional floor later, so you have a blank template. And this is the floors. Floor 1, floor 2, and the roof. When you open it, it's not zoomed in correctly, because it uses the original zoom level from the city, I think, or something like that. Just hit zoom extents, and we see it. Save, so it stays that way. Floor 2, same with zooming, and roof, same with zooming. Now, it did one more thing to my city map when I did this. Let's just see this. You see this purple square around the house? That's actually a link. It made a link in the city map, so I can just click on this house to go to the floor plan automatically. This won't be much use to me now, because the original map is part of the community atlas, so you making links in your local copy of the map doesn't really help. I will still need to make the link in the map to link it to your house when I receive the floor plans for the atlas anyway, if you submit them to the atlas, that is. But this is a nice functionality when you make your own cities. Now I can just click the building. It asks if I want to save changes. If I don't save changes, the link isn't kept, of course. So I can just save changes, and I can go back to the main map. So this adds some navigation to your system, which is quite nice. So there's the house. Okay, let's go to the floor plan. Again, as I said earlier, I don't care too much about this roof drawing, just added this to demonstrate. But the problem now, as we talked about, is the scale. Because now this map, I picked the imperial scale, so this map is scaled in feet and inches. And let's just do a measurement. Info, distance, and I measure the wall from one end to the other, and it's 5 foot. If I go back to the building in the city and I do a distance from one end to the other, it's 5 meters. So again, as I said, Camping Cartographer don't scale it correctly if you don't pick the same type as the original. So let's fix this. This is quite fast. The only thing I need to know is that I need to know the conversion ratio. So let's bring up a calculator. Now, how much is a foot expressed in meters? Well, 1 foot is 30.48 centimeters. So if I want to express 1 feet in meters, it's 1 divided by 0.3048. And if you don't know the number 30.48 centimeters, you'll find it on Google. But this is the scale factor I'm needing, 3.28. So this means that 1 meter is the same as 3.28 feet. I need to know this. So let's put this off to the side. What I'm going to do now is that I'm going to hit the drawing properties, drawing units, and you can see here that this is basically saying that each unit in the map should be 12 inches. That's actually not quite right. What I'm going to do is that I put this into memory, and I'm going to take 12, the original number, and I'm going to divide it by my scale factor, and I get 3.66 or 3.6576 if you want to. So copy this, and I'm going to paste this in instead. And I'll leave rescale checked because I want to rescale the drawing, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, let's measure this. Info, distance. Now, it's 16.3 or 16.4 feet. I just did that quick, so this is approximate. But it was 5 meters, and we know that 1 meter is a little bit more than 3 feet. So 5 times 3 is 15. So since it's a bit more, 16.4 sounds pretty correct. Agreed? We can even calculate it just to prove it, because I can say that it was about 5 meters. And I want to divide that by 0.3048, and it should be 16.4. Perfect. So this is the step you need to convert it to the right size if I want to use Imperial. Now, of course, I need to do the same thing with my floor 2 drawing, because that's not correct. So I need to set the exact same scale. I think I have it on my clipboard. So do the same. And I can just fix the roof drawing just to do it. And the point of doing what I'm doing now is that this basically changes the units over to the imperial units without changing the sizes of the things in the map. They are now correctly scaled for the new unit system. There are different things I could do. For example, I could just scale everything in the map, just using, for example, so not copy, but non-visual scale, and I can scale the entire map, including the border and everything like that. There are several different ways of doing this, but when swapping scales between metric and imperial like this, going into the drawing properties box and just plop in the new sizes and let it rescale, it's usually the quickest way of doing this. So now we are ready to start on the actual map. So as I said, I just wanted to make a nice little smithy. And it's going to be a 2-story building. I'm thinking that it's quite small, so the stairs from the bottom story to the top is going to be on the outside. And I think that's fine. You can't see that on the city map itself, but always remember when you're doing a detail map from a bigger map like a city map isn't designed to include every single detail of the building. The city map is designed to show the rough shape of the building, but of course there will be pieces sticking out, small things, small details that are really too small to be a part of the city map. They might have been nice when I'm as zoomed in as I am right now, but this is not the way we are normally looking at the city map. Normally, I'm looking at the city map all zoomed out like this. You can't see these tiny details. That's not intentional. So we are going to add some small details. I don't think a set of stairs on the side of the buildings is too much. I think that fits just fine. I also have one more thing I need to consider about the building. You can see that the roof is kind of sticking a bit out on the building here. But if I go to my drawing, you can see, let me turn on the effects so you can see it more clearly. We can see that this is just plain rectangular. Why didn't Campaign Cartographer give me that part of the roof? Well, that kind of goes back to how the original designer of the house interpreted the house. That little piece of roof sticking out can be interpreted in many ways. It could be that the building is actually extending and has a little bit of an extension with room inside sticking out there, but it could also be just a little bit of roof protecting the entrance from the rain, so people standing right outside the building are standing out of the rain and out of the weather, basically. And let's check out this building just to show why Campaign Cartographer generated it the way it did. I'm gonna go to info list on the building, do it, and as we can see that this building is called CD3A Gothic VC1. That's the name of the symbol. So I want to have a look at the actual symbol, so I needed that name. CD3A Gothic VC1. VC stands for Varicolor. So let's go to the symbol manager and let's just find this building. If there's a lot of building in the map, of course, you can scroll a bit. I think this one should be not too far down. Here they are. CD3A Gothic VC. Varicolor buildings can be in many different colors, the same symbol, so it's just shown in white here in the symbol manager, but this is the right building. So let us, and I can also see it seems like it has been placed mirrored in the map. You can see the pipe there is on the opposite side compared to the image, but that doesn't matter. Houses can be played mirrored, not an issue. So let me edit it and have a look at the symbol. I'm going to start by showing all layers, and I'm going to take the main graphics and just send it to the back. There. You all see that white rectangle which appeared on the top of my house? That white rectangle was put there by the guy who designed the house, or more precisely by the guy who imported it into Campaign Cartographer. I'm pretty sure that would be Ralph for these houses, but that doesn't have to be. But he obviously interpreted this house as the inside of the house is this part, which you can see here, and that this extra bit of roof is part of the outside. And this is why Campaign Cartographer created the floor plan the way it did. It doesn't try to find the edges of the house by itself. It looks for this polygon. This polygon is used for multiple things. For example, it can also be used as demographic coloring in a city, so you can color the buildings in a city depending on the purpose. For example, red buildings can be stores, and blue buildings can be homes, and green buildings can be criminal buildings, and black buildings can be police and guards and things like that, so you can have a demographic view of the city. So these are used for several things, but they're also used for describing basically this is the size of the house. So this is why Campaign Cartographer gave me the building it did on the floor plan here. Just straight up, it doesn't show the extra. But I want to keep that in mind. And since I'm making a smithy, I'm thinking a smithy is often a warm place to work. You need a large opening, large space for heat to vent, and probably some large doors to be able to handle deliveries and things like that. Now, it has been commented in the forum that this city is a bit of a cold city. It's quite far to the south, so maybe they didn't need to vent it quite as much, but still standing in front of a forge, no matter how cold outside, is very, very hot work. So they still need to be able to open up. And of course, even if it's in a cold place, they still have summers. It's not winter all year round. So they need a little bit of. So I'm imagining that basically this area of the wall is more or less a big door, and then you have that roof sticking out here on the outside, which is basically just covering up the entrance to the building, making sure that people don't get wet when they're standing in the entrance, and that when it's raining outside, it doesn't rain right inside the door. So let's get started. I also think that the default wall is a bit too thick here. Let's check how thick it is. I think it's probably at least a foot or more. And the wall has actually a line width of 1.6 feet. I'm thinking that probably 1 foot wide wall is enough. I also need to think about what kind of walls do this building have. Since it's a smithy, it makes sense with stone walls on the ground floor, but it probably doesn't have stone walls all the way to the top. So it's probably stone walls on the ground floor, and then we have normal wooden walls and a wooden floor on the ceiling above. So let me change that one. Now let's do change properties. This selects the floor as well. It's difficult to select the wall and not selecting the floor, but I can do it combined. I can say it should not be on the background floor 1 layer. I think the floor is on. Yes, 1 selected, and let's set the line width to 1 foot. A little bit narrower, and it looks a little bit better. Now I think probably the effect is a bit strong, so I'm just going to drop into walls. Actually going to 1 unit, yeah. I'm gonna switch that bevel with a lighted bevel instead. The lighted bevel usually look better. So I'm gonna put that to 0.25 unit perhaps. Yeah, I like the walls better like this, with just a little indication of a bevel on the side and not half the wall disappearing in a bevel. So this is the basics. Should we just throw in the door immediately so we get a nice little double door in place? Would be, let's see, double wooden door. And as you can see, the standard door takes up most of the wall. But I'm thinking that that's probably fine for a smithy. It's still a bit smaller than that outstanding bit of roof, and they can open one door or both doors, like this. So there we go, perfect start for our smithy. Now, thankfully, last month we had some new monthly content, which was conveniently a smithy. It has a furnace, an anvil, and bellows, and things like that. So let's just start putting these in. Now, if I go back to the city map, I remember that, as I close the symbol, up for the house is right here down in the corner. So it kind of makes sense that this is where the furnace is located. So I'm just going to rotate this a little bit. Somehow I always manage to hit the wrong button. So rotate, not. So as you can see, it takes quite a big space. I'm gonna give it a little bit of space on the sides so we can work from both sides, but it's going actually to take a lot of the wall. So I think that's going to work nicely, but we're already seeing here that this is going to be a bit of a tight workspace, but that was kind of the norm in many times, especially inside of a city. Space is at a premium. You don't have as much space as you want. You have to do what you can get. So our smith just have to live with, well, I would have liked to have a little bit more space here, but I don't have more space. Now, one question which might show up when I did just now rotate this the furnace by eye. Sometimes you want to make a precise placement. So instead of rotating by eye, maybe I want it to fit the angle of the wall exactly. And how can I find out the angle of the wall, or more precisely the bearing of the wall? Well, I have a tool called bearing. So I can just use that, click on the wall, and I can see the bearing of the wall is 301 degrees. Now, if the symbol should be 301 degrees or not, that depends a bit on how the original direction of the symbol, and if it's mirrored or not. But generally, this gives you the baseline. You start with this one, and then you have the 4 90 degrees angles. So I can just do this very quickly in... no, I'm not going to do that quickly in Excel because I don't have Excel on my streaming computer, but I can just Notepad just to show you. Because the angles this might need is either 300.9, 300.97 to be exact, or 210.97, that's 90 degrees less, or 130.97, again 90 degrees less, or 41.7. And since this house is a rectangle, I know that if I want to place something next to any of these walls, the angle it needs to be rotated in should be one of these. And again, it's very difficult to say before you start exactly which one of these four it will be, because as you can see from the drawing here, this seems to be drawn with the top against the wall, but a symbol which is drawn to have the bottom against the wall would have to be 180 degrees different. So let's just try. The rotation, well, we can see the rotation I made by eye is 120 degrees. So I'm guessing the correct one should be 130.97. More. And okay, something is slightly off here. You can all see that this doesn't really make sense. Let me check the bearing manually, or just take a quick check like this. Okay, probably when I clicked bearing, it probably picked up something else below here. It can't have been the walls. That's always the oh, did I read it wrong? I see Janshi said should be 120. Maybe it was just me that read it wrong. That wouldn't be weird. Oh yeah, no, it's me who calculated it wrong. Yeah, it should be 120. You're quite right. 210 minus 90 is of course 120.97. And then this should be 30.97. So sometimes happens, you're a bit quick with your math and you get the wrong answer. So it wasn't the measurement, it was only the mapper's fault and not the program. There we go. You see this one? It fits perfectly with the wall. Of course, 120.97 is very close to the 120 I already got, so it doesn't really matter too much, but sometimes walls can be at an odd angle, and doing it by eye can be a bit difficult. The reason I was so exact when doing it by eye was that I was holding down the shift key, which meant it was rotating in 15 degrees increments. That works very well if your wall is also in basically 15 degree increments, like this 120 is. But if it isn't, well, then you are out of luck. I mean, if the wall was 98 degrees, for example, if I did it 115 and we're going 19 and 105, I wouldn't really hit. So it's good to be able to do some exact measurements in Campaign Cartographer to do that. So let me just throw in a couple of more things. We need a bellows, of course. And we need an anvil. So Vincent hates it when the human making my map screws up the project. Yeah, the human is often the weak link. Unfortunately, it's easy doing a mistake and suddenly things doesn't work as you want it to. So yeah, I resized the barrel a little bit because I don't think a quenching barrel need to be quite as big. I think the barrel is too big, really. And we need a hammer. I can do a little bit of a hammer. This one should actually be normal size. Just rotate it and put on the anvil. And we are getting a little bit of a nice little smithy here now. I don't think it's room for the coal heaps on the inside. It's a little bit tight here. Maybe he has a coal heap in the corner, at least one. This is gonna hide behind the walls, so it's nicely hiding there. But I think we might need to have some extra coal stacked outside the building too. Of course, this only works if there aren't a lot of coal thieves in the city. But we seem to have a nice little smithy here. We have some doors which can be opened. We have the tools of the trade. Maybe he needs some gloves. I'm just gonna put them on the anvil. So, a bit of cramped working conditions, but still, he has what he needs. He has the furnace, the bellows, he has the anvil, so all he needs really. So, I could do a lot more with this map, obviously, but since this is a live mapping session, I can't just keep on going for hours upon hours. So I want to make a few quick things here. I want to add the city wall, because we have a city wall behind the building, right behind it almost. So I'm gonna add some sheets for that one. City wall sheet, and I want a city wall walkway sheet. The walkway is where you actually walk on the city wall, and the wall is, yeah, the piece kind of sticking up at the side of the walkway. So let's start drawing that one. I'm gonna start with the walkway. And let's find a nice little fill for that one. I think there is a stone fill here. Yeah, I want a rather plain looking stone fill for that one. I could have used something more elaborate, but I'm going to just stick with a basic stone fill. And I'm using a polygon to draw it. And yeah, I think this works. And don't be afraid of drawing outside the map like I'm doing right now. This is helpful when you have effects that acts on the edges of things, like for example bevels and things like that. It's often good to have the ends outside the map. We can cover that thing up very easily. Then on the actual city wall, I'm gonna switch to a slightly darker stone wall. And I'm gonna do a line width of, this is 0.5, so I think, or was it 1? I don't remember anymore. But anyway, got to do it 1 wide. I'm going to draw it just as a line. I'm gonna use the endpoint modifier, F5. Oops. It was 5, F5 to get the endpoint of my polygons here twice. And I have a nice little line. I think that line is perhaps a bit too narrow actually. So change properties. I just hit P for prior to select what I just drew. D for do it. And I'm gonna change that to 2 feet instead of 1. Yeah, I think that's better. And let's throw in a quick bevel effect. Make it 0.25. Apply. Yeah, okay. 0.5 perhaps. Often need to experiment a little bit to see when bevels which one makes the most sense. And of course, I don't want to see the ugly part outside. You all know about the screen, so let me just delete the old screen with the color del command and make a new one with color auto. And we have a nice little screen covering up these ugly elements extended beyond the map. So there are a few quick more things I want to do. I want to have the paving outside. We can see that on the city map, it's basically paved the entire city. I'm thinking probably that the paving doesn't really extend right up to the house walls always. But again, on a city map, you don't go the tiny little details around each house. That doesn't make sense. So I want something, I want stone paving. I think, yeah. I'm going for the stone paving. It's probably, no, not the stone paving. Actually, I'm going for the cobbles. The stone paving is actually being used inside the building, so I'm going for the cobbles on the outside. So the dark cobbles, fine. And I could have used a drawing tool, but there's no drawing tools that allows me to draw a terrain of cobbles. Why do I need a terrain of cobbles? Well, if you look at the drawing tools, now we have a lot of drawing tools, but I have the floor tools, which do have cobbles, as you can see. And I do have the terrain tool. I'm not going to demonstrate, but there are no cobble here. So why do I want a terrain tool instead of a cobble tool? Well, that has to do with which sheet you are putting things on. The floor tool puts things on the floor sheet, but the floor sheet is usually meant for the floors inside of the building. I don't want the outside cobble to go on the same sheet as the floor inside buildings. It doesn't make sense to me. So I don't have a drawing tool. So instead, I'm just going to actually just pick a random drawing tool. For example, the terrain dirt. I actually want a straight dirt. And I'm just going to draw this. I see there's a couple of questions. I'm going to answer them once I have drawn my little polygon here. I'm gonna draw it on the outside, so I'm gonna draw it like this. And it's now a polygon of dirt. But I didn't want a polygon of dirt. I wanted a polygon of cobbles. So change properties. Again, prior for the thing I just drew. D for do it. And I just changed the fill styles to cobbles. There we go. Okay. I don't want that exact effect. The fading might be okay because you have the dirt overlapping, but it needs to be much closer to the building. So I'm just going to the outside sheet. This is where it is. You can use list on it if you didn't know that. And I'm gonna put it at 0.5, I think. Yeah, 0.5 seems fine. So there we have the building with the floors. Okay. So I had a couple of questions here. First from Sue. If I pick adjacent buildings when I start the floor plan. If I do that, I will get all the buildings on the same map. It won't be one map for each of them. You will get one map with many buildings on them. So this is quite nice if you want to map a lot of buildings next to each other. Do a street or a square or something like that. You can pick more than one building. As for the performance asked by Rodriguez, 11,000, if it will hurt CC3 performance if you put assets on the network share. Kind of. Campaign Cartographer 3 has a buffer for or cache for the bitmaps, and when you scroll around and move around or change zoom levels or export a map, Campaign Cartographer needs access to the resources to display them. If they are already in the memory cache, then having them on a network share won't really mean anything. That's just fine. But the memory cache isn't usually large enough to have all the resolution of all the images in memory at all times. So the contents of the memory cache is constantly shifting around. And that means that if you put them on a network share, every time they are not in the bitmap cache, they will need to be loaded from the share, and that is much slower than loading them from a local drive. So basically, yes, it will usually hurt performance, especially the more complex, the bigger your map becomes. In the beginning, it might seem that there's no difference at all, but for a complex map with a lot of assets, you will feel it. So that's basically the issue there. I would not recommend putting anything on a network share. Putting things on a network share is also some things you need to be careful with in regards to the license, because you're not allowed to make things available for other people. But I don't think there is a problem within your own building, but then again, I'm not an official license expert, so I think you need to actually ask Pro Fantasy Software as well if that is covered by the license and if that is okay. So I have now built a little smithy. I said I wanted a staircase on the outside, so I'm just going to throw in a quick staircase. You can use the rotation we talked about earlier, so that should be 120.97 to follow the wall. But again, you see, based on the direction the stairs were drawn, this is not the direction I want them in, so I need to change them by 180, which means it should be this one. There we go. I also think it's a bit big to be on the outside of a building, so I'm going to just halve it, I think. This, yeah, not quite happy, 0.7 perhaps. These stairs outside buildings are often small and narrow, so don't be afraid of going too small, but not too small either. I think I'm going with this one. I'm gonna put it slightly up against the wall like that. And because I'm lazy, I'm just going to grab a trapdoor and use that for the platform the stair leads up to. I could have drawn it in several different ways, but a trapdoor makes sense for me right now, and I'm gonna make it a little bit larger than the stairs so it can extend into the wall a little bit like this, I think. It's also slightly different materials and coloration just to show it's different from the map. I actually want the platform on top of that wall, so I'm gonna do add symbols for top. Gonna move that down to below the walls. I'm gonna copy the effects from the existing symbols layer, and I'm just going to grab this one and change properties to put it on the top sheet. I'm doing this because this is the platform leading into the second story of the building, so it kind of makes sense. It's on top of the walls, and it kind of shows that this is up there. Maybe I should adjust the stairs just a tiny bit to don't make it protrude like that. I don't want a tiny step to protrude because that looks weird, like this perhaps. Yeah, that looks less weird than a tiny part of a step protruding. So I'm not gonna spend more time. I could probably tweak the effects and work a little bit on it, but I'm not going to do anything more about that. So For the final part, we're gonna look a little bit at the top floor. I'm not going to complete it now, then we will probably be going for an hour more, but we can talk a little bit more about the second floor. So I have the second floor here. I have scaled it, but that's just about all I have done. So what should I do with the second floor? Well, first of all, the wall. I didn't want a stone wall on top, I want a wooden wall, and I want it to be narrower. The wooden wall is probably narrower than the wall on the main floor, which I still never remembers exactly what settings I used, but that's why we have list. I pick the wall and unpick the rest, and it's, yeah, I used one foot exactly. Fine. When you are as forgetful as me, you need to go back and check things all the time. So I'm going to change on the top one. Now again, it's going to select the floor at the same time. It's not possible to select in just the wall, but again, you can combine it in a lot of ways. I can, for example, say combine, and it should be on the walls layer. Walls down at the bottom. There we go. And this should be line width 0.5 and fill style. I think there are some wall fills, wood wall. Let's make it an oak wall. Fine. Now, the first thing I want to fix that looks really weird now is the floor. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys are carpenters or not. I'm not. But even I feel that the planks going like that is weird. So we need to fix it. I'm going to temporarily just hide the walls so they don't get in my way. And to fix the direction of the planks, all you have to do is right click the polygon, select the shaded polygon, angle by edge. Angle by edge is just a special case of the normal shaded polygon. It just automatically finds the direction by the angle you pick it by instead of you having to input it. So angle by edge makes sense. It now asks me to select this polygon. And if you look at the line here, select lowest straight edge of the polygon. So I'm gonna select the long straight edge here. Ding. And voila, it aligns to that edge. Escape to cancel the command. There is, however, one thing this command also does. It turns it into a shaded polygon, which is used for roofs and things like that. So it's now actually shaded according to the direction it's facing and the global sun in the map. However, I don't want the floor to be shaded by the sun. The floor is flat. So I can now use the numeric edit, this little button on it, and I get this option dialog with a lot of nice options for shaded polygons. And I check the option called shade only copy. This basically tells it, well, you want to keep the rotation, but you don't want the shading. And there we go. The floor is now correctly aligned and it doesn't have any shading. It does have shadows from the edges, but that's just a shadow effect used. And when we turn on the walls again, it should look really nice. So this is one of the important tricks to get the floor, the pattern in the floor pointing the right way, being aligned the way you want it to be aligned. Now thing looks much nicer. But I did a lot of things in the bottom map, which maybe should be visible in the top map as well. Like, maybe we want to actually be able to see what's out there. Well, I think I want that actually. So I'm actually going to use a trick that came with Cosmographer. If you own Cosmographer, you can do this manually just by copying the elements. But if you have Cosmographer, just enable the menu, use the multi-deck tools, copy to level, and I want to copy the wall. I want to copy the background. I want to copy the stairs. And I actually want to copy the main wall as well, because I want the stone wall to be seen below the main wall. So gonna unselect the floor. And I think that's it. Do it. And I'm gonna copy this to floor 2. If you don't have Cosmographer, you can just use a clipboard copy. Instead, you could do edit, copy. You can copy it to the clipboard, and then you can paste it on the destination map. I can, for example, I can do that just to show you how to do that. I can do that with the bellows. I don't need the bellows, but no, sorry, not the bellows, the furnace. I don't need it, but I can just do it just to show you. I can do instead edit, copy, select it, do it. When you do a clipboard copy, it always asks for the clipboard origin. It suggests 0.0, the lower left corner of the map. I'm gonna accept that by hitting enter. Now, when I go to the next map, now it already contains a lot of the details because I used the Cosmographer tool, but I'm gonna paste the furnace I copied, edit, paste, and I now have it on my cursor, but instead of manually placing it, you remember we picked it up at 0.0, and this map should have the exact same dimensions and placement as the original map, right? So if I, instead of clicking to place it, just type 0.0, I'm putting it down the same place we picked it up in the original map. And you can see how nice it fits. Of course, I don't want that one. That was just a demonstration how to use clipboard copy instead of using the Cosmographer tool. Now, the effects didn't come with, so I need to manually change the effects. I could have saved this as an effect preset or something like that, but I didn't. Did anybody remember what I said? Because I did not. And I think I'm just going to go back. I'm gonna check. Yeah, it was 0.5, and I'm gonna just copy the city wall effect. I can only copy one sheet at a time, so go back and city wall, paste that one, and change that one to the correct amount. And the screen is also not correct on this one, so again I type color del to delete the existing screen. It suggests I should delete from the screen sheet, so I hit enter to confirm and type color auto to generate a new screen. There we go. Second floor is ready. Now, as you can see, I copied the stone wall and it's now on top of my other wall. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to use the move to front, pick the wooden wall, do it, and we now have the wooden wall on top of the stone wall. And I think the bevel is way too much, so let's go in, fix the bevel, and put that at 0.2 units, I think. Yeah, and I also want the lighted bevel instead. Yeah, the problem that occurs right now is that they are sharing the sheet. I don't want, and that means that the wooden wall doesn't get any effects. I don't want that. So I'm actually going to make 2 wall sheets. Add walls below. And move up. I'm going to actually just copy the bevel effect. Go. And I'm going to just change the sheets of the stone walls. Now again, it can be a little bit difficult to select things because I only want to put the stone walls. Now I don't even remember what fill they're using. Let me check. The walls are fill this one, natural stone 5. Okay, natural stone 5. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just do change properties, select the walls, but it has to be the fill style of natural stone 5. That should be only the stone walls. Do it, put it on walls below, and do it. Yeah, it's actually it's nearly invisible because of the black outlines, the black glow on the wooden walls. So I think I need to actually, I think I'm going to take the glows and paste it to the wall below, and I'm gonna remove it from these walls like this probably. Yeah, not quite happy. Let's see what we can do with this one. I think maybe we should keep one on each. Okay, I'll try copy this one. So, things like this is just a bit of experimentation. I didn't really plan exactly the look of this, so that's too wide. Let me do it 0.25. Yeah, and we should also do one more thing, because the walls below should obviously be below the floors. Because we don't want to see the stone wall on the inside, we only want to see it on the outside. Yeah, there we go. It's getting closer. Maybe I would have liked to tweak the effects and work with them a little bit more. And it's a bit smallish, but I think maybe we can just live with the walls like this. You can tweak it a bit more yourself. You kind of have to decide a little bit, because the stone walls has this gap, how you want to handle this. I don't think it looks too weird since I know what's below. It might look weird if you look just at this floor in isolation. You could artificially have just drawn the complete wall just to show it's a wall down there, because even if there is a big door down there, there is probably a piece of wall on top of the door. Maybe the part on top of the door is maybe just plain wood and not stone. It's up for you to decide. But remember, when we move one floor up and see things from above, then we don't see the same cutouts in the wall. For example, windows would be completely invisible, because again, you would see the wall from above, not the cutouts where the windows are. Things like that. Sue said I could also draw the porch roof here. Yeah, absolutely, I could do that. It's a bit short on time, but it is probably, we could do it simply by going to, I am guessing we have in the city maps, just open a symbol catalog, cities. This is my lifestyle, so this is 5. City of Schlei. Roof grills. Is there anything? Doesn't really have the kind of awning I want. And this looks like it has a touch-based awning, so wow. Since we are getting a bit short on time, let me just slap on something like that. Could work. I need to work a little bit with the effects, but I'm not going to deal too much with that. There's also a vari-colored, so I could make the darker brown or something like that. But before we end, I do need at least a door. You can see this door is a bit large, but this is a very small house. And I should also get this one, so let's just maybe just scale it by eye. Yes. Yeah. This is the problem that can happen if you have 2 walls on the same. If you saw what happened, the door actually cut the stone wall below and not the wooden wall. And that's because both of them were on the walls layer. So that's actually quite natural. But let me just hide the walls below. The walls, hide the walls below. This, and it should now behave properly. There we go. Now you see it behaved like it will. But this is also things you need to be a bit aware of when you do things like that and you place walls below walls. Both walls are appropriate for the doors to break. Camping Cartographer 3+ doesn't really know which wall you intend to break, so it just picks the first one, which happened to be the stone wall. But hiding it before placing the door, place the door and then putting it back on, works. Now, just to illustrate how small this house really is, I'm going to place a bed. Just a normal single bed. Make sure we go to set normal, because while a house might have a small door, well, it might also have a smaller bed, but there is a limit to how small you can make a bed. People are needing to actually sleep in it. And unless you're dealing with shorter people like halflings and things like that, you kind of need a full-length bed. So this is full-length bed. If I measure it in full distance, it is 6.3 foot long. Well, certainly you can say, well, maybe you don't need a full 6.3 foot. Most people aren't even 6 feet tall, so you might be able to make the bed a bit smaller than it's here, but you can still see that in a small house like this, the bed takes up a lot of space. But people in the old days didn't always have a lot of space. Of course, this is a fantasy city, so fantasy doesn't have to be medieval. I personally like to have fantasy a bit more true to the medieval aspect, don't have too many differences, but that's a matter of opinion and taste. But at least you can see in a small house like that, you're not getting too much stuff in it. So this is probably someone who lived in quite squalid condition, quite simple conditions at least. They had their work at least, but they didn't have a separate office and a separate computer room and a separate room for the kids and a separate kitchen and and a Sunday living room where they only had guests, all kind of things. They had a little room. So in this case, of course, I picked a very small house. And I put the blacksmith, a small blacksmith, so maybe, as John says here, a blacksmith could be larger than average size. Absolutely. And one of the advantages you often had was that your house was on the top of your shop. So if you need a large shop, well, then you probably actually had some space to, more living space as well. And of course, I didn't put in more floors here, but maybe there is an attic up here. Maybe we could put in a small ladder up to the attic. Get a little bit smaller. And maybe there was at least a crawling attic up here where the children could sleep and you could store a little bit of things, so you had at least a little bit of extra space. But it's worth thinking about when you're making. People often made do with these small houses. So it's also important when you are mapping, remember, because things like a bed can't really be much smaller than it has to be. I can't just make this bed minuscule just to fit a lot of things in there. Then nobody could actually live here unless they were halflings. So it's worth thinking about when you are mapping. But with that in mind, I think we have reached the end of this session. Went a bit longer, but I think you know that when I'm doing the live streams, they often do get a bit longer. But I hope you still enjoy it. And I hope this gave you a few things to think about. We didn't get to complete the map completely, but we did get to put in most of the important elements. What remains is perhaps put a little bit more things for the blacksmith. Perhaps there are some things on the outside of the house. I mean, if we go back to the city map, there is a lot of space around this building, so perhaps he used a bit of the outside of the house for storage, things like that. It's worth thinking about, as long as it wasn't things worth stealing. And when I'm looking at the building right next door on the map, it seems like this could have been an excellent blacksmith, actually. So maybe he just picked the wrong house, or maybe he just want to compete with the real blacksmith next door. Maybe he's just secretly much better than him, but prefers not to work in the large building. Whatever. I think this house still made a nice little blacksmith. But again, it's a lot of smaller decorations, a lot of things to think about, which really makes the map stand out. I'm just covered some of the basics here to make it work properly, align things correctly, scale things correctly, get the basics in, but still a lot of things to be done. So I don't see, as Vincent comments, who needs a big house when you have to work 18 hours a day anyway? Yeah, that's true. Of course, people in all ages have had free time as well. It's not like people never had free time, but they certainly had a lot less free time than we have today. And yeah, you kind of needed to spend a lot of time in your actual work. So you don't really need the same amount of space at home, certainly. So yeah, if there isn't any more questions, I'm just going to end the session right here. I'm just going to leave it on for a minute more so people have time to ask questions. But again, yeah, I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that people take this as an opportunity to join in on the contest. Contests are always a fun way to challenge yourself, and as you saw with this little map, I mean, it's not completely done, but I spent an hour and a half, and most of it I spent talking to you about different ways of doing things I want to do, how to do things. If I was actually just mapping for myself, I would have done this in less than half the time, probably much less than that as well. So in an hour, I would have two floors ready probably. So think about that for the competition. You don't need to have all the time in the world to join a competition, but you get to just challenge yourself, do something else, something you didn't normally plan to do. So just try, see if you can find an hour or two of your life and just join. I understand that not everybody would be able to do even that. I've had times in my life that's been quite impossible myself. But if you can find the time, try to see, well, maybe, yeah, make a small map like this one. It doesn't have to be the big one. Just take part. And there are prizes, random prizes being given out just for taking part. So you can be lucky, just even if you're not winning the best map part of it, you still have a chance of a prize anyway. So I hope people will join. And I also hope people will submit a map to the Atlas after the competition, so we can fill out the city. Part of our goal is to actually fill out the city and make it a community city where we map every single building in it. So, doesn't seem to be any more questions, so I'm just going to say thank you for watching. I think Ralph will have a session next week, depending on exactly how he gets home from GameCon and how tired he is and how things he can get arranged. I think he is getting home the day before or something like that, but I'm not quite sure. But you'll have to see. He'll put up the normal announcement if there is a session. So, thank you, and I'll be seeing you guys in the forum or in a live stream at a later date. So have a nice day and be seeing you.